The headlights were a river of blinding, angry diamonds, snaking down my private mountain road and crashing against the closed iron gate of my property. At the head of the procession was a party bus the size of a whale, its windows pulsing with colored lights, the faint thump-thump of a bass line vibrating in the quiet night air. Behind it, a long line of expensive, gleaming cars, Mercedes, BMWs. A few Porsches were trapped, their occupants starting to get out. Their formal wear, a bizarre and glittering contrast to the dark, rustling woods around them. On the other side of my gate, a woman in a tight sequined dress was having a complete and utter meltdown. It was Brenda, the president of the adjacent Homeowners Association. And she was screaming into the call box, her voice a shrill, hysterical shriek that echoed through the trees. "Open this gate. Open IT right now. You're ruining my daughter's engagement party. I have 100 guests here. They're very important people. I reserved this lodge. You have my deposit. This is fraud. This is a breach of contract." I sat in the quiet of my office, watching the scene unfold on my security monitor, a knot of ice and fire in my stomach. The 70 people from the corporate retreat I was actually hosting were enjoying a quiet, elegant dinner in the main hall, completely oblivious. I pressed the talk button on the intercom, my voice calm, steady, and amplified by the small, powerful speaker at the gate. "Ma'am," I said, my voice ringing out in the night. "There is no reservation under your name. There is a private event in progress. You are trespassing. Need to have your guests turn around and leave." Her scream of pure, unadulterated rage was a thing to behold. She started rattling the bars of the gate, a woman completely unhinged. And that's when everything went wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. What would you do if this happened to you? And subscribe to HOA Files. To understand that moment of beautiful, glorious chaos, you have to understand my dream and the woman who tried to turn it into her personal playground. My name is Alex. For 10 years, I worked a soul-crushing job in corporate finance, saving every penny, my one singular obsession pushing me forward to one day buy and restore a piece of history. I'm not a fancy guy. I'm a carpenter at heart, a man who loves the smell of old wood and the satisfying heft of a well-made tool. 2 years ago, I found it at the Black Bear Lodge. It was a magnificent, historic mountain lodge built in the 1930s, a masterpiece of rustic architecture that had fallen into disrepair, sitting on 50 acres of pristine private forest. It was outside the jurisdiction of any HOA, a beautiful, secluded island. I poured my entire life savings and every ounce of my sweat and passion into bringing it back to life. I restored the massive stone fireplace, refinished the hand-hewn log walls, and modernized the commercial kitchen. My vision was to create a high-end, exclusive, and intensely private event venue, a place for elegant weddings, quiet corporate retreats, and family gatherings. A place where people could escape the world and be surrounded by authentic, timeless beauty. The business, once I opened, was an immediate success. I was booked out a year in advance. I was meticulous about my clients and my process. Every booking was done through my professional website with a signed contract and a hefty non-refundable deposit. Privacy and exclusivity were my brand. The one shadow on my perfect mountain paradise was the new, ultra-exclusive gated community that had been built on the adjacent mountain, Eagle's Landing. And the shadow's name was Brenda. Brenda was the president of the Eagle's Landing HOA, and, as I would soon learn, she also ran a high-end event planning business on the side. She saw herself as the arbiter of taste and luxury for the entire region. And from the moment she first laid eyes on my successful, beautiful, and completely independent venue, she saw me not as a neighbor but as competition and a threat. Her welcome visit, a month after I opened, was a thinly veiled corporate espionage mission. She drove up in her white Range Rover, dressed in clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage, and demanded a full tour. "It's quaint," she'd said, looking around my magnificent, lovingly restored great hall, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's very rustic. A little amateurish in its execution, but it has potential, I suppose." She then proceeded to pepper me with questions about my rates, my booking policies, my client list. She was gathering intelligence. As she was leaving, she paused on the grand stone terrace, looking out at the breathtaking view. "My daughter Tiffany is getting engaged soon," she said, more to herself than to me. "Her party will be the event of the season. It will require the perfect venue. Something with real class. I'll be in touch." I had no idea that this was not a potential business inquiry. It was a threat. A few weeks later, an email from her landed in my inbox. It wasn't an inquiry. It wasn't a question. It was a list of demands. "Alex," it began, with a breathtaking lack of formality, regarding my daughter Tiffany's engagement party on Saturday, October 15th. "I will require the use of the main hall and the full terrace from noon until midnight. I will also require full access to your commercial kitchen for my caterers. Please send me your preferred vendor list for florists and lighting at your earliest convenience. Also, I will need you to ensure your staff is properly attired. We are expecting over 100 very important guests." I stared at the email, my jaw on the floor. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it was almost impressive. She hadn't asked if the date was available. She hadn't asked about my rates. She had simply informed me of her plans, as if my lodge was a community clubhouse that she had a right to use. I took a deep breath and composed a polite, professional, and very firm reply. "Hello, Brenda," I wrote. "Thank you for your interest in the Black Bear Lodge. For all booking inquiries, please visit our official website at this link. There you will find our availability calendar, our rates, and our booking policies. As a quick note, we are, unfortunately, already fully booked for the weekend of October 15th. I wish you the best of luck in finding a suitable venue for your daughter's party. Sincerely, Alex." The lie about being booked was a small, preemptive measure of self-preservation. I wouldn't have rented to her if she had been the last person on earth. Her reply was swift, and the mask of civility was gone. "This is an official HOA community event. I am the president of the Eagles Landing Homeowners Association. Your lodge, while not technically within our gates, is in our community's sphere of influence and benefits from the prestige of our residents. You are therefore expected to make the venue available for key community functions. This is not a request. I've already informed my daughter and all of our guests that the party will be at your location. Do not embarrass me." I was no longer just baffled. I was furious. This was a direct, aggressive attempt to bully me into giving her my property for free. I had my lawyer draft and send a formal cease and desist letter. The letter stated in no uncertain terms that the Black Bear Lodge was a private business, that she had no reservation, no contract, and no right to use the property. It warned her that any further contact would be considered harassment, and that any attempt to enter the property would be treated as criminal trespassing. We sent it via certified mail. I thought foolishly that would be the end of it. No sane person would continue to plan a party for 100 people at a venue they had been legally barred from. But Brenda, I was learning, was not a sane person. She went quiet for a few weeks, and I began to hope the legal letter had scared her off. The weekend of the 15th approached. As it happened, I had gotten a legitimate last-minute booking for that weekend, a quiet, respectable corporate retreat for a software company. The contract was signed, the deposit was paid. I felt a sense of relief. Truly unavailable. And then, 2 days before the event, I found it shoved in my personal mailbox at the bottom of my long driveway. A single, professionally printed, gold-embossed invitation. My heart sank into my stomach as I read the elegant, curling script. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Tiffany and Chad. Saturday, the 15th of October, at 7 o'clock in the evening. The Black Bear Lodge." She had done it. The madwoman had actually sent out the invitations. She had ignored my refusal, ignored the cease and desist from my lawyer, and was proceeding as if her own delusional fantasy was reality. And that brings us back to that chaotic Saturday night. My legitimate clients, the software executives, were in the middle of a quiet, catered dinner in the main hall. They were a lovely, respectful group. And then, at 6:45 p.m., the headlights began to appear, a river of them, snaking their way up. my long, private, one-lane mountain road. It was a procession of luxury vehicles, and leading them all was the party bus. My main gate, a heavy custom-made iron gate, was of course closed and locked, as it always was during a private event. The procession ground to a halt, creating a chaotic $100,000 traffic jam on a road that was barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. Brenda, dressed in a shimmering sequined evening gown, disembarked from the bus like a queen. Descending from her chariot, she marched to the call box at the gate and began to furiously press the button. I sat in my office watching her on the security monitor, a cold, calm fury settling over me. I let her press it a few more times before I answered. "Good evening, Black Bear Lodge," I said, my voice calm and professional. "Alex, open this gate immediately. My guests are here. You're 15 minutes late." She shrieked into the intercom. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, my voice amplified by the speaker at the gate, loud enough for the first few cars of her guests to hear. "There must be some mistake. We have a private event in progress. I don't have a reservation under your name. Do not play games with me," she screamed, her voice distorting through the speaker. "My daughter's engagement party? For 100 guests. We have a contract." "I'm afraid that's not correct, ma'am. We have no contract. In fact, I have a certified mail receipt for a cease and desist letter sent to you by my attorney, instructing you to stop claiming your event was being held here. You do not have a reservation. You are trespassing. You need to have your guests. Turn around and leave my private road immediately." Her guests, 100 people dressed in black tie and cocktail dresses, were now getting out of their cars, stranded on the dark mountain road. The bus was too large to turn around. A complete and utter logistical nightmare of her own making. They were starting to murmur, to complain, to yell at her. Her own daughter, the bride-to-be, was standing by the bus, her face a mask of dawning, horrified humiliation. Her fiancé looked like he wanted to be swallowed by the earth. "You are lying," Brenda screamed, now rattling the bars of the gate. "You've ruined everything. You've ruined my daughter's special night. I will sue you. I will destroy you." She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking with rage. "I am calling the police. I am telling them you have taken my deposit and you are locking me out of my own party." And she did. It took the sheriff's deputies nearly 30 minutes to navigate the clogged, narrow road. When they finally arrived, I buzzed them through the main gate, leaving the party bus and its 100 angry, stranded guests outside. I met the senior deputy on my porch. I calmly and quietly explained the situation. I showed him the printouts of the email exchange. I showed him a copy of the cease and desist letter and the signed receipt. I showed him my legitimate signed contract with the software company whose retreat was currently and peacefully underway inside. The deputy, a man who had clearly seen it all, just shook his head in disbelief. He went back down to the gate. I watched on my security monitor. He spoke to Brenda for a long time. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I saw her face contort in a series of ever more frantic expressions of rage and denial. Finally, the deputy's patience was clearly at an end, he informed her, in a voice that was now loud enough for me to hear over the intercom that this was a civil matter, that she had no legal right to be there, and that she and her 100-person-strong party were causing a public nuisance and a serious traffic hazard on a private road. He told her to disperse her party immediately, or he would start issuing citations and having the cars towed at their owner's expense. The retreat of the damned is a sight to behold. It took over an hour for the massive party bus to slowly, painfully, back its way down a mile of winding one-lane mountain road. The expensive cars behind it engaged in a chaotic ballet of 20-point turns, their drivers yelling at each other, their designer dresses and tuxedos covered in dust. It was a complete and total self-inflicted public humiliation. Brenda's world was shattered. Her reputation as a high-end event planner was destroyed. The story of her fake party and the subsequent traffic jam from hell became the stuff of local legend. Her daughter, I heard, was not speaking to her. The HOA board, facing a tidal wave of ridicule and anger from its own residents, held an emergency meeting and forced her to resign. This whole insane saga taught me a powerful lesson. Entitlement is a form of delusion. Brenda was so convinced. of her own importance, so used to getting her own way. She couldn't conceive of a reality where her desires were not law. She built a fantasy event on a foundation of pure, arrogant lies and just expected the entire world to bend to her will. Instead, she just managed to create a very real, very public monument to her own spectacular folly. She tried to steal my dream, and in the end, all she did was turn her own into a nightmare. Brenda is now facing a massive lawsuit from the party bus company and the caterers for the disastrous, non-existent event. But her husband, the wealthy tech mogul, just used his trust fund to buy the undeveloped 100-acre land parcel right next to my lodge. And his official application to the county is for a multi-stage outdoor concert and festival amphitheater.